Act New Zealand.
5 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
5 votes opposed.
Are you going to vote on all 1,000 of these?
1 vote in favour.
1 vote opposed.
We have 1,000 votes. Members, the ayes are 63, the ayes are 53, the noes are 69. The amendment is not agreed to. I've taken advice, members, and the ruling is going to be that the committee, having rejected the proposal to change the commencement date, that all other amendments are substantially the same and inconsistent with the committee's earlier decision, therefore out of order. Point of order, the Honourable Darren Hughes.
Mr Chairman, the opposition views this matter quite seriously, because this is a continuation of an approach that's been taken around amendments being submitted by the opposition. The only mechanism that the opposition party has to have influence on legislation when it's in the committee of the whole is by way of amendment. Now, there's a series of points to be made here. First of all, these are all individual amendments. The value of the next amendment cannot be determined by the fact that there might be several other amendments that contain dates of a different date or different time and place than the one of the amendment that we're currently voting for. They are separate amendments. Secondly, sir, this is legislation about the accident compensation scheme. There is significant political debate about the timing with regard to the dates in the scheme that's been subject to debate and submissions at Select Committee during the Select Committee process. During that time, the concept of dates becomes critical to the passage of the bill through Parliament. To rule out all the amendments that are being made simply because a decision has been made about one particular date, when there are so many dates around this area, I think, sir, is very unfair on the opposition, and I don't think, sir, is in the spirit of the ability to make amendments to legislation. It follows on from what happened previously, sir, when the opposition put up well thought out amendments which were dismissed because the government said, oh well, there might be some sort of fiscal impact on it, and those were taken out as well. What's now being ruled from the chair is that there are no amendments that the opposition can put up, that there will be a determination of opposition amendments, which is to deny the ability of the opposition to make amendments to legislation before the Parliament. I regard that, sir, as very, very serious indeed, considering that this is not only, it's important legislation that we're considering, but from a process point of view, the right of members of Parliament to bring amendments to legislation before the floor of the committee is a very, very important right, and that's being taken away by that is being proposed to be taken away by the chair on the basis that there are simply too many, and I think that's the wrong way to come towards that determination, sir, simply on the balance of other work before the committee. These amendments that have been put in, that are within order, ought to be considered ought to be voted on by the House on their own merits, and the government can vote against them. That's what the choice is before the committee. But forcing the committee into a position whereby opposition amendments are considered only on the basis of what's going on that day, which appears to be what is happening, I think is a hugely retrograde step, and it actually takes away rights from the opposition, sir, that I regard as quite serious. And I'd ask you to give some serious consideration to that, because it may be an issue which we need to seek the view of the Speaker.
Speaking to the point of order.
Call the Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr Chairman, the senior government whip is being rather cute here. You have 1,066 amendments that would involve the House in many, many hours of debating. Now, the purpose of this Parliament is to have good, robust debate. What you are effectively, if you allow these amendments, is that you're saying the opposition can effectively stall the parliamentary process by simply listing a four date, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, can technically table 20,000, 100,000, 200,000 amendments, force this Parliament to a standstill for what is actually not a principled argument in this Parliament doing as it should, robustly argue issues of concern, what it effectively would do is say that the opposition can bring the Parliament and its work to a halt. It can make a farce of the process. It can tie this institution that costs tens of thousands of dollars every hour in meaningless votes over a whole lot of different dates, when really the principal issue is that Labor doesn't agree with the bill, not that they somehow want to defer it off on 1,060 different dates when it might be implemented. We cannot allow our Parliament to be made into a farce. I think the ruling that we have had from the Chair is absolutely fair and proper.
I call the Honourable Darren Hughes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for that. And there's a degree, there's a kernel of truth in one of the points made by the Minister. Of course, it is technically possible for this Parliament to be flooded every single day we meet with unlimited numbers of amendments by the opposition party. That is true every single time we meet. It's within the purview of opposition members to take points of order if they wish, all during question time. Indeed, the Minister himself made quite a feature of that during 9 years in opposition. It was actually quite an art that he had perfected. All those things are possible, but the reality is they do not happen because Parliament operates on a series of understandings and conventions and a will to get things done 99% of the time. Where that falls apart, well, the Minister wants to use his open microphone to interject, he can, but the point I'm making to him, Mr. Chairman, the point I'm making is that these things do not happen because the Parliament's business must go through, the opposition cooperates with that. But what has become very clear is that the government is trying to roll over the top of the opposition this week, shutting down parliamentary question time, for example, so there's no question time between now and March the 17th. We've had amendments that were ruled out by way of financial veto. The Minister himself, who talked about the ability to have robust debate in this Parliament, did not take a call at any stage today in order to defend his own legislation. So we could accuse him of a breach of parliamentary protocol. What I'm saying to you, sir, is that it is very unusual for the opposition to lodge this number of amendments, but the fact that it has happened and the fact that there are so many and that of course it involves a lot of work for a lot of people does not undermine the fact that these are amendments which are in order, that it is the ability of Parliament to have the opposition to be able to do this, and I think, sir, you're being asked to take into account a far wider gambit of things than would ordinarily be the case. For example, there are many times during a normal government day, where government orders of the day take precedent, where the opposition put up amendments. There might be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 amendments. And you could argue that some of them have some level of fiscal impact. But we don't see the government running around like they did at 2 o'clock today with the Leader of the House coming in and ruling out all those amendments. And in that case, there were only 3 amendments, all 3 very substantial amendments. In particular, the amendment of my colleague Mr Anderton, who put up a new part around, for example, suicide. So they were very sensitive and serious matters. And I think, sir, what's being done here is that for the fact that there's a feeling that there's some time pressure and the government is unhappy about the fact that things are going slower than they would have liked to have seen. And of course, let me assure you, they're the master of their own destiny in that particular respect. The opposition had a reasonable deal to cooperate on all these matters. But I think we would have easily. One of the ironies is this bill would be law by now if the approach that Dr Smith and Mr Brownlee are taking hadn't been the case. It would have passed its 3rd reading. So there's a degree of irony in that. But all that, sir, is just by the by. What's important is amendments that are within order, that are submitted to the clerk's office, should be able to be voted on their own merits and not being held up in wider political concerns, which are not your responsibility as chairman. Your responsibility as chairman is to the committee and to make sure that the rights of the minority can be advanced here. And I think the fact that this is something that happens rarely should be a message in itself to the government, but to the House, or to the committee rather, it's simply a case of our amendments being able to be considered by the committee of the whole, and I don't think that other matters should be taken into account.
Speaker, point of order. I'll hear one more. The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Chairman, before I deal with it, sir, can I ask that you deal with David Bennett and Jerry Brownlee, who interjected after I was given the call on a point of order?
Well, I'm not going to deal with anybody. I want to say that people on both sides have been guilty of making comments and interjecting while others have points of order. It hasn't got to a level which I've found yet objectionable.